I'm Madison Carter, 28 years old, and my mother has forgotten my birthday every year since I can remember. Last month, I bought myself an Audi A5 after a major promotion at my marketing firm. When I posted it on Instagram, my phone suddenly blew up with a text from my mom, not with belated birthday wishes, but demanding an urgent family meeting. 6 years of silence broken because she saw my $55 success symbol. The irony wasn't lost on me. Before I tell you how this all went down, let me know where you're watching from in the comments, and if your family has ever only shown interest when you've succeeded, hit that subscribe button. Trust me, you'll want to hear how I finally stood up for myself after years of being the forgotten child. Growing up in Rochester, New York as the middle child between my older brother Ryan and younger sister Emily shaped me in ways I'm still unpacking in therapy. Our family dynamic was textbook middle child syndrome, but with an extra dose of invisibility that left lasting scars. My father, James, was physically present but emotionally absent, working 60-hour weeks at his engineering firm. He'd come home, pat Ryan on the head for whatever sports achievement he'd accomplished, coo over Emily's latest art project, and nod absently at me before disappearing into his home office. I learned early that being noticed required exceptional achievements, and even those often went unaccompanied. My mother, Patricia, however, was the architect of the family's emotional landscape. She was the PATE president, the neighborhood committee organizer, and to outsiders, the picture-perfect mother of 3 well-adjusted children. Behind closed doors, she was selective with her attention and affection, and I rarely made the cut. My 8th birthday stands out as the first time I fully understood my place in the family. I woke up excited, having dropped hints about my birthday for weeks. I came downstairs to find nothing, no cards, no wrapped presents, no special breakfast. My mother was helping Ryan prepare for a science competition while Emily played with her dolls at the table. "Mom," I said, standing in the doorway in my pajamas, "do you know what day it is?" She glanced up briefly. "Tuesday, Ryan. Make sure you have your presentation notes." "It's my birthday," I whispered. The flash of realization across her face was quickly replaced with a dismissive wave. "Oh right, happy birthday, sweetie. We'll do something this weekend maybe." That night, I snuck into the kitchen and took a single cupcake from the package my mother kept for unexpected guests. I stuck a match in it instead of a candle, lit it, and sang to myself in the dim light of our backyard treehouse. I was 8 years old, and I'd already learned to celebrate myself. By 12, I'd lowered my expectations but still felt the sting when my mother planned a mother-daughter shopping trip with Emily on my birthday weekend. "But Mom, we were supposed to have my birthday dinner on Saturday," I reminded her. "Oh, Madison, I completely forgot we scheduled that." "Well, Emily's been looking forward to this. Your birthday is just a date we can celebrate next weekend." Next weekend never came. Instead, she bought me a generic card and a sweater that was clearly on sale 3 weeks later. "Better late than never," she'd said with a laugh, not noticing how I didn't join in. My 16th birthday coincided with Ryan's regional baseball championship. Not only did my parents forget my birthday entirely, but I was forced to sit through a 4-hour game and a celebratory dinner for my brother, all while wearing the fake smile I'd perfected over the years. Later that night, as I sat alone in my room, I made a promise to myself. One day I would build a life where I mattered, where my achievements were celebrated, where my presence was valued, and where I never had to remind anyone of my worth. My academic achievements became my refuge. I maintained a 4.0 pod, joined every academic club possible, and built a college application that was impossible to ignore. When my acceptance letter to Northwestern arrived with a partial scholarship, my mother glanced at it and said, "That's going to be expensive. Ryan's baseball scholarship is covering everything." The contrast in how she treated us couldn't have been clearer. Ryan's baseball games warranted rearranged schedules and enthusiastic cheering sections. Emily's dance recitals meant new outfits and bouquets of flowers. My academic honor ceremony, my parents arrived late and left early, missing my scholarship announcement entirely. My grandmother Eleanor was the only one who saw me, my mother's mother. She lived an hour away but made the trip for every important event in my life. She remembered my birthday without fail, arriving with a thoughtfully chosen gift and a card that always contained the same message: "Madison, you shine so bright, never let anyone dim your light." She taught me to journal, to process my feelings through writing instead of bottling them up. "Your mother means well," she would say, "but some people don't know how to love outside their own expectations. That's about them, not you." When Grandma Eleanor passed away during my sophomore year of college, I felt truly alone. The funeral was the last time I'd seen my extended family until the infamous family meeting. My mother had been more concerned with the funeral arrangements looking appropriate than with anyone's grief, including her own. College became my sanctuary. I worked 3 jobs: barista in the mornings, library assistant between classes, and waitressing on weekends while maintaining my scholarship requirements. Sleep was a luxury, but independence was worth the exhaustion. I limited my calls home to major holidays, and even then the conversations were superficial. My graduation was a perfect encapsulation of my family dynamic. My parents arrived 30 minutes late to the ceremony, missing my departmental honors acknowledgement. They left immediately after the main event, citing the long drive home, declining my invitation to the small celebration dinner my friends had planned. "We're proud of you," my father said mechanically before they left, while my mother was already on her phone checking emails. What they didn't know as they drove away was that I'd already accepted a position with a marketing firm in Chicago. I was moving further away, both geographically and emotionally, and a part of me felt nothing but relief. Chicago welcomed me with its imposing skyline and unforgiving pace, both of which suited me perfectly. My entry-level position at Horizon Marketing paid barely enough to afford my studio apartment in a questionable neighborhood, but it was mine. No one could forget my birthday there because no one knew when it was. The anonymity was refreshing. My tiny studio became my sanctuary, 1,200 square feet with a kitchenette barely big enough to cook ramen, but I painted the walls myself, hung art I found at thrift stores, and splurged on a decent mattress. Every item I purchased, every bill I paid on time, was a small victory in my quest for self-sufficiency. The first year was brutal: 14-hour days, weekends spent learning additional software skills to make myself indispensable, and the constant fear that I wasn't good enough, that I'd fail and have to crawl back to Rochester with my tail between my legs. The thought alone was enough to keep me working through exhaustion. My phone calls home dwindled to major holidays, and even those were exercises in emotional detachment. My mother would spend most of the time talking about Ryan's job at my father's friend's firm or Emily's college experience. When she'd finally ask him, "What about you, Madison? How's the marketing thing?" I'd give vague, positive answers that required no follow-up questions. "It's going well, learning a lot." "That's nice, dear. Did I tell you Emily made the dean's list?" My birthdays continued to pass unaccounted. The first year I thought perhaps the distance and my new phone number were to blame. By the 3rd consecutive forgotten birthday, I recognized it as the pattern it had always been. The turning point in my career came during my 3rd year at Horizon. Our team was assigned a struggling account, a local restaurant chain trying to rebrand after a food safety scandal. No one wanted to touch it, fearing association with failure. I volunteered. Nights and weekends disappeared as I immersed myself in the project, researching similar crises, developing a transparency campaign that acknowledged the mistakes while showcasing the dramatic improvements. I was running on caffeine and determination when I presented my strategy to the client's executive team. "This is exactly what we needed," the CEO said afterward, shaking my hand. "Someone who understood we needed honesty, not just spin." The campaign succeeded beyond expectations. Restaurant traffic increased by 30% within 3 months. My boss called me into his office the following week. "Madison, I'm going to be honest. When you took this account, I thought you were committing career suicide." He slid a folder across his desk. "Instead, you've earned this, associate director, with the appropriate salary adjustment, of course." That promotion was the first of several that followed over the next 3 years. Each one required the same formula: taking on the projects others avoided, working longer hours than anyone else, delivering results that spoke for themselves. The imposter syndrome never fully disappeared, but it became a familiar companion rather than a paralyzing force. My social life consisted mainly of work connections until I met Jessica during a charity event Horizon was sponsoring. She worked for a nonprofit partner organization, and her blunt humor cut through my professional facade immediately. "Your speech was great," she said at the reception afterward, "but your face during the CEO's introduction looked like you were mentally calculating how to escape through the nearest window." I laughed for what felt like the first time in months. That obvious? Only to another introvert forced to play extrovert for career advancement. Jessica became the friend I never had growing up, the one who remembered my birthday without social media reminders, who showed up with takeout when deadlines kept me working late, who called me on my self-destructive tendency. "You know you don't have to prove yourself worthy of basic consideration, right?" she said one night as I worked through another weekend. "The world won't end if you take a day off." Through Jessica, I developed a small but genuine circle of friends who valued me simply for being Madison, not for my achievements or what I could do for them. The concept was so foreign it took me years to fully trust it. Meanwhile, my relationship with my family remained superficial at best. Last year's birthday was particularly telling. My mother called 3 days late. "Oh, Madison, was that this week? I'm losing track of dates these days. Well, happy belated." No card followed, no gift, not even a text on the actual day. I finally started therapy after that call, recognizing that my drive for success, while beneficial professionally, was rooted in a desperate need for validation I'd never received at home. My therapist helped me see how my childhood had shaped my adult behaviors: the perfectionism, the difficulty accepting praise, the fear that any relationship could disappear if I wasn't constantly proving my worth. "You've built an impressive life," Dr. Myers told me during one session, "but are you building it for yourself, or are you still trying to earn the approval of people who've shown they're incapable of giving it?" The question lingered with me for months, influencing my decisions in ways I was only beginning to recognize. I was healing, slowly, learning to celebrate my own achievements rather than hoping for external validation that never came. And then came the promotion that would change everything. The email arrived on a Tuesday afternoon with the subject line, "Meeting request, your future at Horizon." My stomach dropped. Despite 6 years of proven success, my first thought was that I was being let go. Imposter syndrome is relentless that way. Instead, I walked into the conference room to find the CEO, my direct supervisor, and the head of her waiting with champagne. "Madison," my boss began, "your work on the Westfield campaign exceeded all expectations. The client has not only renewed their contract but doubled their budget specifically because they want to work with you." The CEO nodded. "We're creating a new position, Senior Marketing Director, overseeing our top-tier accounts. The salary is double your current compensation plus enhanced benefits and equity options." I sat there stunned into silence as they outlined the details of an offer that would fundamentally change my financial reality. When I finally found my voice, I asked for 24 hours to review the contract, not because I was considering declining, but because I needed time to process that this was really happening. That night, I sat on my apartment floor surrounded by the paperwork, Jessica on speakerphone as I verified I wasn't hallucinating. "Madison, this is incredible. You've earned every penny of this. Please tell me you're going to celebrate properly and not just put it all in saving." I laughed. "I don't even know how to celebrate properly. My idea of splurging is ordering appetizers." "Well, what's something you've always wanted but convinced yourself was impractical or undeserved?" The answer came immediately: a nice car, not just reliable but actually nice. I've been driving the same used Honda since college. "That's it then. You're getting your dream car. What is it?" "An Audi A5, sleek, sophisticated, not obnoxiously flashy but still beautiful." The idea terrified and exhilarated me. I'd been so financially cautious for so long, saving aggressively, living well below my means even as my salary increased. The thought of spending that much money on something that was purely for my enjoyment rather than necessity triggered all my old insecurities. I brought it up in my next therapy session. "I keep thinking about what people will say, that it's wasteful or showing off." "Which people?" Dr. Myers asked. I paused, realizing the answer: my family, specifically my mother. The same family that hasn't been involved in your daily life for 6 years, the mother who consistently forgets your birthday. Put that way, it seemed absurd to still be making decisions based on their hypothetical judgments. Over the next few weeks, I researched obsessively safety ratings, reliability statistics, resale value, insurance costs. I created spreadsheets analyzing whether the purchase made financial sense given my new salary. It did comfortably. Still, when I walked into the dealership, I nearly turned around 3 times. The salesperson approached, and I blurted out, "I'm just looking," before he'd even spoken. He smiled patiently. "No problem. Let me know if you have any questions. The new A5s just arrived last week." I circled the display model, a sleek quantum gray with the Premium Plus package. It was even more beautiful in person than in photos. Cautiously, I opened the driver's door and sat inside, inhaling the new car smell and running my fingers over the leather steering wheel. "Would you like to take it for a test drive?" the salesperson asked. 2 hours later, I had signed the paperwork. As I drove off the lot in my new car, I experienced an unfamiliar feeling that took me a moment to identify: pride, not the quiet satisfaction of a job well done, but genuine, uncomplicated pride in what I had achieved and my decision to reward myself for it. The drive back to my apartment was exhilarating. The car responded to the slightest touch, the premium sound system playing my favorite playlist as I navigated through Chicago traffic. For the first time in my adult life, I felt like I was driving something that represented who I had become rather than who I had been. When I parked in my assigned spot, I sat there for several minutes, taking it all in. On impulse, I snapped a photo of myself in the driver's seat, the Audi logo visible on the steering wheel. I rarely posted personal content on social media, maintaining accounts mainly for professional networking. But something about this moment felt worth sharing. I opened Instagram and uploaded the photo with the caption "Hard work, persistence, and believing in myself led to this moment, my new ride and symbol of how far I've come." Within minutes, the likes and comments started rolling in from colleagues and friends. Jessica texted immediately, "Yes, it's gorgeous, so proud of you for doing this for yourself." What I didn't expect was the ripple effect through my extended network. Former classmates, distant relatives, people I hadn't spoken to in years suddenly appeared in my notifications with congratulatory messages. Some were genuine, others tinged with the particular flavor of envy masked as concern. "Wow. Must be nice to spend that kind of money, and hope you got a good deal. Those depreciate fast." For 2 days there was nothing from my immediate family. I hadn't expected anything different and was honestly relieved. Then on Thursday evening my phone buzzed with a text from my mother, the first direct communication in over 3 months. "Madison, we need to have a family meeting this weekend. Important matters to discuss. Be at our house by 12 Saturday." No hello, no congratulations, no acknowledgement of my achievement, just a summons, as if I were still a child who could be commanded to appear. And yet, the timing made the connection obvious. She had seen the car. Somehow that had warranted more response than any other event in my adult life. I called Jessica immediately. "What do you think this is about?" I asked after reading her the text. "Oh honey, it's absolutely about the car. I bet your entire extended family has been gossiping about it, and now your mom feels like she needs to address it somehow. Should I even go?" Jessica was quiet for a moment. "That depends. What would serve your healing better, setting a boundary by declining, or going in with your eyes open about what you're walking into?" I thought about it overnight, weighing my options. Part of me wanted to text back a simple no and continue building my life without their conditional interest, but another part, the part still working through childhood wounds and therapy, wanted the confrontation. Wanted to finally address the patterns that had shaped so much of my life. Friday morning I texted back, "I'll be there." The anxiety built throughout the following day. I imagined various scenarios, practiced responses, prepared myself for criticism and judgment. What I wasn't prepared for was the realization that hit me as I packed an overnight bag for the 3-hour drive to Rochester. The family meeting had been scheduled for the day before my birthday. Once again, my mother had either forgotten or deliberately chosen to ignore it. Some patterns never change, but I was no longer the same person caught in those patterns. This time I would be driving to Rochester in my $55 zero symbol of independence, ready to break the cycle once and for all. The drive to Rochester gave me plenty of time to think. The Audi handled the highway beautifully, its engine purring as I pushed past the city limits into the rolling farmland that separated Chicago from my hometown. Under different circumstances, I might have enjoyed the journey. My playlist shifted to a song that had been popular during my college years, triggering memories of those long drives home for holiday breaks, the growing sense of dread as familiar landmarks appeared, the rehearsed answers to inevitable questions about my life. The countdown until I could reasonably leave again. This time was different. I was different. The woman driving this luxury car back to confront her family was not the same girl who had fled in a used Honda 6 years ago. Dr. Myers and I had discussed strategies for the meeting during an emergency session the previous afternoon. "Remember, you can't control how they react, only how you respond," she'd reminded me. "Set your boundaries clearly and hold them, no matter what emotional tactics they try." "What if they make me feel like that invisible little girl again?" I'd asked, voicing my deepest fear. "Then you acknowledge the feeling without letting it dictate your actions. You feel it, you name it, and you choose to respond as the accomplished woman you are now." The Rochester exit appeared sooner than I was ready for. I took the familiar turns automatically, noting how the neighborhood had barely changed while I had transformed entirely. The high school looked smaller than I remembered. The park where I'd spent hours alone writing in my journal seemed diminished somehow. My parents' house, however, appeared exactly as it always had, meticulously maintained Victorian with fresh paint and perfect landscaping. Image was everything to Patricia Carter. As I pulled into the driveway, I noticed several additional cars parked along the street. My stomach tightened. This wasn't just a family meeting, this was an audience. I checked my reflection in the rearview mirror, adjusted my blouse, and applied a fresh coat of lipstick armor for the battle ahead. Taking a deep breath, I stepped out of my car, immediately aware of curtains twitching in the front window. My entrance had been noted. Before I could reach the front door, it swung open to reveal my mother, dressed in one of her church luncheon outfits, smile firmly in place. "Madison, you're right on time. Everyone's already here." No hug, no good to see you, just efficiency and the unspoken implication that I was the last to arrive, despite being exactly on schedule. The entryway opened to the living room, where I was greeted by more people than I'd anticipated. My father sat in his usual armchair, nodding a silent greeting. Ryan lounged on the sofa beside his wife Melissa, whom I'd met only twice. Emily perched uncomfortably on an ottoman, offering a small wave. But the surprise additions were Aunt Carol and Uncle Steve, my mother's sister and brother-in-law, and two of my cousins, along with my father's brother, Uncle David. This wasn't a family meeting, this was a tribunal. "Madison, you remember everyone," my mother said, as if we'd all seen each other recently instead of at my grandmother's funeral 4 years ago. I managed polite greetings, accepting awkward half-hugs and cheek kisses from relatives who were essentially strangers now. The conversation immediately turned to superficial catching-up jobs, weather, local news, carefully avoiding any mention of why we were actually gathered. As I moved toward the kitchen to get water, I overheard Aunt Carol whisper to my cousin, "Did you see Madison's expensive car? Marketing must pay better than we thought." The judgment in her tone was unmistakable. I forced myself to keep walking, reminding myself that their opinions couldn't hurt me unless I gave them that power. In the kitchen, I found my mother arranging an elaborate spread of finger sandwiches, fruit platters, and pastries, far more effort than she'd ever made for my actual visits in the past. "Can I help with anything?" I asked, falling into the old pattern of seeking approval through usefulness. No, I've got it all under control," she answered, not looking up from her meticulous arrangement of cucumber sandwiches. "Though I suppose you could take those napkins to the dining room. We'll eat before we talk." The lunch that followed was an exercise in calculated avoidance. Everyone discussed safe topics: the weather, a recent local festival, Emily's graduate school applications, while studiously ignoring both my car in the driveway and my approaching birthday. The tension built beneath the polite conversation like pressure in a sealed container. Ryan, never one for subtlety, was the first to crack. As he reached for a second helping of potato salad, he casually remarked, "So, little sister is doing well enough to afford German engineering these days. Must be nice." "Ryan," my father warned, but without much conviction. "What? I'm just saying, some of us work hard without flashy rewards." I took a sip of water, buying time to compose my response. "I've worked very hard for 6 years. The car is a result of that work." "Must be quite the promotion," Aunt Carol interjected, curiosity poorly disguised as concern. "Those luxury cars cost a fortune to maintain, you know." I factored maintenance costs into my budget. I replied evenly, "I'm quite careful with financial planning." My mother's tight smile never wavered as she steered the conversation to safer ground, but the tension had been acknowledged. Everyone now knew that my success was the reason for this gathering. As lunch concluded, Emily helped me clear plates while the others migrated to the living room. In the kitchen's momentary privacy, she whispered, "I think what you've accomplished is amazing, Mads. Don't let them make you feel bad about it." The unexpected support from my typically quiet sister brought a lump to my throat. "Thanks, Em. That means a lot." "I've been following your career on LinkedIn," she admitted. "You're doing exactly what you always said you would. I admire that." Before I could respond, my mother swept back into the kitchen. "Girls, we're all waiting. Bring the coffee tray, Madison." And just like that, I was relegated back to helpful daughter rather than successful professional. I caught Emily's sympathetic glance as we followed our mother to what felt increasingly like an intervention. The living room had been rearranged since lunch. The chairs now formed a rough semicircle, with a single chair positioned across from the group, clearly my designated seat. My father sat slightly apart, uncomfortable but present. Ryan and Melissa sat together on the love seat. While the extended family filled in the remaining spaces, my mother took the center armchair, the position of authority. As I set down the coffee tray and took my isolated seat, I felt a surreal calm descend. This setup was so transparent, so melodramatic, that it almost made me want to laugh. They had cast me as the prodigal daughter who needed correction, but I was no longer auditioning for their approval. "Well," my mother began with a deep breath, "I think it's time we discuss the reason I've asked everyone to gather today." All eyes turned to me as I sat, back straight, in my $55 zero symbol of independence, waiting for the storm I'd been preparing for my entire life. "We're concerned about Madison's financial decisions," my mother began, her voice carrying the same tone she used when addressing pay meetings, authoritative, slightly condescending, brooking no argument. I sat perfectly still, hands folded in my lap, face neutral. 6 years of corporate negotiations had taught me the power of silence, of not rushing to fill uncomfortable pauses, let them reveal their full agenda before responding. "That car," she continued, gesturing vaguely toward the driveway, "is a very showy purchase for someone your age. It sends a certain message that might not be in your best interest professionally or personally." Uncle Steve nodded sagely. "Luxury vehicles are depreciating assets, poor investment." "I saw it on your Instagram," my mother added, a revelation that surprised me since she'd never engaged with my social media before. "I didn't even know you were still on those platforms. You've always been so private about your life." The unspoken accusation hung in the air. Private from them specifically. I remained silent, watching as family members exchanged meaningful glances. "What your mother is trying to say," Aunt Carol interjected, "is that we're worried about the values this displays. Material possessions don't bring happiness, Madison." I might have believed her concern was genuine if not for the designer handbag resting beside her chair, the same aunt who bragged about her Kanken timeshare at every holiday gathering. My brother Ryan leaned forward, unable to maintain even the pretense of concern. "Some of us work just as hard without splurging on status symbols. I've got 2 kids and a mortgage. Must be nice to have disposable income for toys." "Ryan," my father cautioned half-heartedly, the first word he'd spoken since the meeting officially began. My mother placed a hand on her chest, the martyr's gesture I remembered from childhood disagreements. "We just think that at this stage in your life, there are more responsible ways to handle financial success. Your brother and sister could use help with their student loans, for instance." Uncle David, who had remained quiet until now, spoke up, "Or contributing to the family vacation fund. We're planning a big trip for your parents' anniversary next year." This was the first I'd heard of any anniversary trip, not that I'd been consulted or even informed. The realization that I was being viewed as a potential source of funding rather than a family member worthy of inclusion stung, but not as much as it once would have. "Since you missed your brother's birthday celebration last month," my mother continued, "you might consider a generous gift to make up for your absence." That was the breaking point, not the suggestion itself, but the casual revelation that Ryan had had a birthday gathering I'd never been informed about, followed immediately by the insinuation that I'd chosen not to attend. "I wasn't invited to any birthday celebration," I said, my voice steady despite the emotions churning beneath the surface. My mother waved dismissively. "I'm sure I mentioned it during our last call." "Our last call was in February, Mom. Ryan's birthday is in May." "Well, I must have texted you then." "You didn't." I pulled out my phone, opened our message thread and held it up. Our last text exchange was about Christmas and before that Thanksgiving. A flicker of uncertainty crossed her face before she recovered. "You're always so busy with your job. I probably thought it would be an imposition." And there it was, the familiar pattern of rewriting history to absolve herself of any oversight or wrongdoing. But this time I recognized it for what it was. I took a deep breath, centering myself. "Do you know what tomorrow is?" The question hung in the air. My father looked confused. Ryan and Emily exchanged glances. My mother's brow furrowed slightly. "Saturday," she guessed. "It's my birthday," I said quietly, "my 29th birthday." The silence that followed was deafening. Emily closed her eyes briefly, my father shifted uncomfortably, and my mother's face went through a rapid series of expressions: surprise, disbelief, calculation, and finally defensive indignation. "Well, of course it is. We were going to surprise you tomorrow." "No, you weren't," I interrupted, my voice still calm but firm. "You forgot again, just like you forgot my 8th birthday when I had to light a match and a cupcake and sing to myself. Just like you forgot my 12th birthday when you scheduled a shopping trip with Emily. Just like you forgot my 16th birthday when we spent the day at Ryan's baseball championship. Just like you've forgotten every birthday since I moved to Chicago." I stood up slowly, no longer willing to physically position myself as the subject of their judgment. "You didn't call this meeting because you're concerned about my financial decisions. You called it because for the first time, you can't ignore my success. You can't dismiss my achievements because they're right there in the driveway. Tangible proof that I've built a life without your validation." "Now, Madison," my mother began, but I held up a hand. "I've worked 60-hour weeks for 6 years. I've earned every promotion through merit and results. I researched that car for months, calculated the costs, and made a responsible decision to reward myself for my hard work. But none of that matters to you, does it? What matters is that I did it without your approval, and worse, I had the audacity to be proud of it publicly. My father finally spoke up, his voice uncertain. Madison, your mother just wants what's best for you. No, Dad, if that were true, she would have remembered my birthday once in the past decade. She would have called when I got promoted. She would have invited me to family gatherings instead of excluding me and then blaming me for not attending. I turned to face my mother directly. You've only ever shown interest in my life when it either reflects well on you or benefits you in some way. My academic achievements were ignored because they didn't fit your narrative. My career success was dismissed because it took me away from your influence. But now that I have something visible that signals success to your social circle, suddenly I'm worth a family meeting. The flush spreading across my mother's face told me my words had hit their mark, but rather than acknowledge any truth in them, she retreated to her most reliable tactic, playing the victim. After everything I've sacrificed for this family, this is the thanks I get: public accusations and disrespect. Her voice wavered as tears welled in her eyes, tears I'd seen deployed strategically throughout my childhood. We've always supported you, Madison. Always. How dare you suggest otherwise? In the past, those tears would have silenced me immediately. The fear of being labeled ungrateful, dramatic, or troublesome would have had me apologizing within seconds. But therapy had helped me recognize emotional manipulation for what it was. Can you name one specific way you've supported my career, Mom? One time you've acknowledged my birthday in the past 6 years without being reminded. One accomplishment of mine you've celebrated with the same enthusiasm you've shown for Ryan's or Emily's. The silence that followed was answer enough. My mother looked to the others for support, but even loyal Aunt Carol seemed uncomfortable now. I don't need to defend myself to my own daughter, my mother finally said, voice tight with indignation. No, you don't, I agreed, but I don't need to defend my life choices to you either. I didn't come here for your approval of my car or my career or any other aspect of my life. I came because despite everything, some part of me still hoped that maybe, just maybe, this meeting was actually about wanting to be part of my life in a meaningful way. I looked around at the faces watching this confrontation with varying degrees of discomfort and fascination. I've spent my entire life trying to earn the attention and validation that came so easily to my siblings. I worked harder, achieved more, silenced my own needs, all in the hope that eventually I'd be enough. But I've finally realized that the problem was never that I wasn't enough. The problem was that nothing I did would ever be enough for you. My mother stood now too, arms crossed defensively. If you've just come here to attack me. I didn't come here to attack anyone. You invited me to a family meeting, remember, to discuss my financial decisions. Well, here's my statement on that. My finances are my business. My car is my choice. My life is my own. And while I would love to have a genuine relationship with my family, I will no longer accept being an afterthought, a resource, or an inconvenience. The room had gone completely still. Emily was watching me with what looked like admiration. Ryan appeared genuinely stunned. My father stared at the floor, conflict evident in his expression. I picked up my purse from beside the chair. I'm going to head back to the city now. If anyone would like to have a real conversation, one based on mutual respect and genuine interest, my number hasn't changed. I walked to the door, pausing with my hand on the knob to deliver one final truth. And if anyone would like to wish me a happy birthday tomorrow, I'd welcome the call, though I won't be waiting by the phone. The sound of the door closing behind me felt like the period at the end of a very long, complicated sentence. I walked to my Audi, hands trembling slightly as I unlocked it. Only when I was safely inside, the engine purring to life, did I allow myself to feel the full weight of what had just occurred. Not regret, not exactly, but a complex mix of grief, relief, pride, and a strange, unexpected lightness. As I pulled away from the house that had never truly felt like home, I caught a glimpse of movement at the living room window, someone watching me leave. For the first time in my life, I didn't wonder if they were proud of me. I only knew that I was finally proud of myself. My hands were shaking so badly by the time I reached the end of my parents' street that I had to pull over. The adrenaline crash was hitting hard, leaving me lightheaded and slightly nauseated. I rested my forehead against the steering wheel, focusing on my breathing the way Dr. Myers had taught me. In 2, 3, 4, hold 2, 3, 4, out 2, 3, 4. 6 years of therapy sessions, journaling exercises, and carefully maintained boundaries had culminated in that 15-minute confrontation. I'd finally said all the things I'd rehearsed in my head during sleepless nights, but the reality felt both more overwhelming and more liberating than I'd imagined. My phone buzzed in my purse. For a wild moment I thought perhaps my mother was calling to apologize, a fantasy so unlikely I almost laughed through my tears. Instead I saw Emily's name on the screen. "Hello," my voice sounded rough even to my own ears. "Mads, are you okay?" Emily's voice was hushed, suggesting she'd stepped away from the family gathering to make this call. That was intense. "I'm okay, just processing. How bad is it in there?" "Mom's crying and Dad is trying to comfort her. Ryan is defending them, of course. The aunts and uncles are making awkward excuses to leave." She paused. "But Mads, what you said needed to be said. I should have backed you up more. You didn't need to get yourself in the line of fire, Em." "Maybe not, but I've watched this happen our whole lives. The way they forget your birthday, the way they dismiss your achievements. I've benefited from it, being the baby of the family, and I've never called them on it. I'm sorry for that." Her apology brought fresh tears to my eyes. "Thanks, Em, that means a lot. Where are you now? Please don't drive all the way back to Chicago like this." "I'm just down the street, I needed a minute." "There's the Holiday Inn Express off the highway. Why don't you get a room for tonight? We could meet for coffee in the morning if you want. Actually celebrate your birthday for once." The unexpected offer of support caught me off guard. Emily and I had never been close, our 7-year age gap and our different positions in the family hierarchy creating a distance that had seemed unbridgeable. Yet here she was, reaching across that divide. "I'd like that," I said simply. After hanging up, I navigated to the hotel Emily had suggested. The room was generic but clean, a neutral space where I could decompress. I called Jessica as soon as I'd settled in, needing to process with someone who knew the full context of my family dynamic. "I did it, Jess. I actually stood up to them." "I'm so proud of you. Tell me everything." I recounted the confrontation in detail, from the ambush family meeting to my final exit. Saying it aloud helped solidify the reality of what had happened and my feelings about it. "How do you feel now?" Jessica asked when I'd finished. "Shaky, sad, relieved, proud, terrified, all of it at once." "That sounds about right for finally breaking a lifelong pattern. What happens next?" "I don't know," I admitted. "Emily wants to meet for coffee tomorrow morning. She actually remembered my birthday without being reminded, which is a first. That's a positive sign. Maybe this confrontation needed to happen for things to change. Maybe, or maybe nothing changes except me finally accepting that this is who they are, and adjusting my expectations accordingly." After we hung up, I ordered room service, a small indulgence that felt appropriate for the occasion. As I waited for my food, I opened my laptop and began writing in the digital journal I'd maintained since college. The words flowed easily, a stream of consciousness processing of the day's events. The culmination of years of built-up feeling. I wrote about the fear I'd felt walking into that house, the shock of seeing the assembled family members, the slow realization that this was an intervention about my success rather than my failures. I wrote about the moment my mother revealed she'd forgotten my birthday again, and how different it felt to call her on it this time instead of swallowing the hurt as I'd always done before. I wrote about Emily's unexpected alliance, the tiny sprout of potential relationship pushing through the cracked foundation of our family structure. By the time I'd finished writing, it was past midnight. Technically, it was now my birthday, 29 years old, alone in a hotel room 3 hours from home, after confronting my family for the first time in my life. Not the celebration most would choose, but somehow fitting for the end of this particular chapter. My phone buzzed with notifications, midnight birthday wishes from Jessica and my small circle of friends in Chicago, all of whom had set reminders because they knew the significance of being remembered on this day. I scrolled through them, feeling a wave of gratitude for the chosen family I'd built. Sleep came surprisingly easily, emotional exhaustion overriding the lingering adrenaline. I dreamed of driving my Audi along winding mountain roads, windows down, no particular destination in mind, just the freedom of movement and choice. I woke to more birthday messages and a text from Emily confirming our coffee meeting at 10 a.m. As I showered and dressed, I found myself thinking about what Dr. Myers often reminded me: healing isn't a single moment of catharsis. It's a practice, a daily choice to honor your truth and set boundaries that protect it. Yesterday had been catharsis, today would be practice. The coffee shop Emily had suggested was a small local place I'd never visited during my years in Rochester. She was already there when I arrived, 2 cups on the table and a small gift bag beside them. "Happy birthday," she said as I sat down. "I got you a vanilla latte. I hope that's still your go-to." "It is, thank you for remembering." She pushed the gift bag toward me. "It's not much, but I wanted you to have something to open today." Inside was a leather-bound journal, the cover embossed with my initials, Grandma Eleanor always said you were the writer in the family, Emily explained. I thought maybe you still journaled like she taught you. The thoughtfulness of the gift connected to our grandmother, the one person who had seen and valued me, brought a lump to my throat. I do actually. This is perfect, Em. Thank you. We spent 2 hours in that coffee shop, talking more openly than we ever had before. Emily shared her own struggles within the family, different from mine, but significant nonetheless. As the youngest, she'd been simultaneously coddled and pressured to follow the exact path our mother envisioned. With little room for her own aspirations, my apparent rejection of family ties had increased the pressure on her to be the good daughter. I admired you for getting out, she confessed, for building your own life on your terms. I was just too scared to follow your example. As we were preparing to leave, my phone rang. I expected Jessica checking in, but instead saw Dad on the caller ID. Emily and I exchanged surprised glances before I answered. Hello? Madison, my father's voice sounded hesitant. I'm comfortable. I wanted to call and wish you a happy birthday. Thank you, I said, genuinely surprised. And to say that I heard what you said yesterday, about me not acknowledging your achievements or remembering important dates. You were right, and I'm sorry. The apology, however awkward, was so unexpected that I momentarily lost my ability to respond. I've never been good at this stuff, he continued into my silence, emotions communicating, but that's an explanation, not an excuse. You deserve better from your father. I appreciate you saying that, Dad. Your mother isn't ready to talk yet. She's processing, I guess you'd call it. But I wanted you to know that I'm proud of what you've accomplished, Madison. The car, the job, all of it. You did that on your own and it's impressive. Thank you, that means a lot. After a few more minutes of slightly less strained conversation, we said goodbye with a tentative plan to speak again soon. I set my phone down, meeting Emily's curious gaze. Dad just wished me happy birthday and apologized. Her eyebrow shot up. Wow, I've never heard Dad apologize to anyone. Me neither. As I drove back to Chicago that afternoon, taking the scenic route along Lake Michigan, I found myself reflecting on the whirlwind of the past 24 hours. The confrontation had been necessary, cathartic, and long overdue, but the unexpected outcomes, Emily's reaching out, my father's apology, suggested possibilities I hadn't allowed myself to consider. Not that everything would suddenly be fixed. My mother's pattern of emotional manipulation was deeply ingrained, unlikely to change without significant self-reflection she might never undertake. Ryan's resentment and competitiveness would take time to address. If it could be addressed at all, the decades of family dynamics couldn't be restructured overnight. But perhaps, as Dr. Myers had suggested, healing didn't require perfect resolution or even full reconciliation. Perhaps it only required me to speak my truth, set my boundaries, and remain open to authentic connection where it was genuinely offered. I stopped at a scenic overlook beside my grandmother's favorite lake, a spot she'd brought me to whenever I visited her as a child. Standing at the water's edge, I opened the new journal Emily had given me and wrote a single line on the first page. Today, on my 29th birthday, I choose to close the chapters that no longer serve me and open myself to the possibility of writing new ones. The Audi waited patiently in the parking lot, no longer just a symbol of professional success, but of personal liberation as well. As I drove the final stretch home to Chicago, I felt lighter than I had in years, unburdened of expectations I'd never be able to meet and the constant striving for validation that had never come. Whatever happened next with my family, reconciliation, redefined relationships, or continued distance, I would face it as the woman I had become, not the forgotten child I had been. And that, I realized, was the most meaningful birthday gift I could have given myself. 6 months have passed since the family confrontation that changed everything. The seasons turned from spring to summer, summer to fall, and now winter approaches Chicago with its familiar chill. My life is transformed in ways both subtle and profound, like a garden rearranged by an earthquake, disruptive, yet creating space for new growth. The immediate aftermath played out much as I'd expected. My mother maintained radio silence for 3 weeks, a classic withdrawal of attention meant to punish my insubordination. When she finally called, her voice carried the strained politeness she typically reserved for disagreeable neighbors or difficult parents. Madison, I hope you're well. No acknowledgement of our confrontation, no reference to my birthday having passed, just a clean slate in her mind, the past conveniently erased. I held firm to my new boundaries. I'm doing well, thank you. Before we continue, I want to be clear that I stand by everything I said at the family meeting. I'm open to rebuilding our relationship, but only if we can acknowledge the patterns that damaged it in the first place. The silence that followed stretched so long I thought she might hang up. Finally, she sighed. I suppose we could discuss it at some point. It wasn't much, but it was more concession than I'd ever received from her before. The relationship with my father developed more quickly. True to his word, he began calling regularly. Awkward conversations at first, neither of us quite sure how to interact outside our established roles, but gradually we found common ground in discussions about books we'd read. His newfound interest in photography, my marketing projects that didn't involve technical jargon. He was trying in his own way to see me as a person rather than simply his middle child. Ryan remained distant, still nursing the perceived slight of my success and unwilling to examine his role in our family dynamics. I made peace with that distance, understanding that not every relationship could or should be salvaged. Emily, however, blossomed into the sister I'd never truly had growing up. Our coffee date on my birthday evolved into weekly video calls, text threads sharing everything from work frustrations to movie recommendations, and even a weekend visit where she stayed at my apartment and we explored Chicago together. The 7-year age gap that had once seemed insurmountable now felt insignificant as we connected as adults with shared experiences and understanding. The most significant development came 3 months after the confrontation. My mother called on a Tuesday evening, her voice uncharacteristically hesitant. "I've been seeing someone, a therapist," she clarified quickly. "Dr. Winters." She suggested that perhaps, well, that it might be beneficial if you joined me for a session. I nearly dropped my phone in shock. Patricia Carter seeking therapy, acknowledging she might need help with relationship dynamics. It was unprecedented. "I'd be willing to do that," I said carefully, not wanting to sound too eager or skeptical. The joint therapy session was as difficult as I'd anticipated. My mother struggled to hear criticism without becoming defensive, and I worked to express my feelings without the accumulated resentment of decades coloring my words. But it was a beginning, the first time we'd attempted to communicate honestly rather than performing the roles we'd always played. "I don't think I ever really saw you," she admitted during a particularly raw moment. "I had this image of what my family should be, and when you didn't fit that image, I guess I looked past you instead of seeing who you actually were." It wasn't a complete transformation, and one session couldn't undo a lifetime of patterns, but it was the first crack in the wall that had always stood between us. We've had 2 more joint sessions since then, each difficult but necessary, each ending with slightly more understanding than we began with. Professionally, my life continued to flourish. The senior marketing director position challenged me in new ways, pushing me to develop leadership skills rather than simply executing tasks perfectly. I built a team that reflected my values: collaborative, innovative, supportive, and discovered that helping others succeed brought a different kind of satisfaction than personal achievement alone. Most importantly, I established healthier boundaries between my work and personal life. The need to prove my worth through constant achievement gradually lessened as I internalized the lessons from therapy. My value wasn't determined by productivity or recognition or anyone else's approval. The Audi remained a joy to drive, but its significance evolved. What had begun as a symbol of professional success, then transformed into a declaration of independence, now settled into simply being a well-earned reward for hard work and a daily reminder of how far I'd come. I no longer felt the need to justify the purchase to anyone, including myself. As my 29th year draws to a close, I find myself reflecting on the journey of these past months. The growth hasn't always been comfortable. Setting and maintaining boundaries requires constant vigilance and occasional reinforcement. There are still difficult conversations, still moments when old insecurities resurface. Healing isn't linear, it's a winding road with unexpected detours and occasional backtracking. For my 30th birthday next week, I've planned something I've never done before: a celebration centered entirely on what I want. No trying to accommodate family expectations, no settling for being forgotten, no pretending it doesn't matter. Jessica has helped organize a small gathering of my closest friends at my favorite restaurant, followed by a weekend trip to a lakeside cabin where we'll hike, read, cook together, and simply enjoy each other's company. My mother sent a card last week, arriving noticeably early rather than belatedly or not at all. Inside, beneath the printed message she'd written in her precise handwriting, "Madison, I'm working to be better at recognizing important moments. Happy birthday. I'm proud of the woman you've become, even when it wasn't what I expected. Love, Mom." Not effusive, not perfect, but sincere in its simplicity, and the first birthday acknowledgement she's offered without prompting in over a decade. I keep the card on my nightstand, not because I need her validation, but as a small marker of progress. a recognition that relationships can evolve if both parties are willing to do the work. Some days that feels like enough. Other days, I acknowledge the lingering sadness for the mother-daughter relationship we never had and might never fully achieve. What I've learned through this journey is that healing doesn't require perfect resolution or fairy tale endings. It doesn't demand that everyone acknowledge their role in your pain or make amends to your satisfaction. Healing is about reclaiming your own narrative, setting boundaries that protect your well-being, and opening yourself to authentic connection where it's genuinely offered. The most expensive thing I ever bought wasn't my Audi, it was the price I paid learning that my value comes from within, not from anyone else's approval. And that lesson, unlike my car, is absolutely priceless. I still drive with the windows down sometimes, music playing, no particular destination in mind, just enjoying the freedom of movement and choice. On those drives, I often think about that little girl celebrating her 8th birthday alone with a match stuck in a cupcake. I wish I could tell her that one day she'll build a life filled with people who remember her birthday without being reminded, who celebrate her successes without resentment, who see her completely and love her anyway. I wish I could tell her that her worth was never dependent on being noticed or validated or chosen, that the strength she's developing through being overlooked will eventually become her greatest asset, that the sensitivity that makes the forgetting hurt so much will also allow her to build deep, meaningful connections with people who deserve her time and trust. Most of all, I wish I could tell her that the journey ahead is difficult but worthwhile, that she'll emerge from the shadows of neglect into the light of self-acceptance, that she'll learn to celebrate herself so thoroughly that others' recognition, while welcome, become supplementary rather than necessary. But since I can't tell her, I honor her instead by living as the woman she needed to become to survive and eventually thrive, strong but compassionate, successful but grounded, independent but connected. The road to healing is never complete, but I'm no longer trying to reach a perfect destination. I'm learning to appreciate the journey itself, with all its unexpected turns and breathtaking vistas. Some relationships will continue to evolve, others will remain distant. New connections will form based on mutual respect and genuine care rather than obligation or validation seeking. And through it all, I'll keep driving forward in the life I've built for myself, grateful for both the challenges that shaped me and the strength I found to overcome them. Have you ever had to stand up to family expectations or set boundaries with loved ones? What helped you find the courage to speak your truth? Share your experiences in the comments below. And don't forget to like and subscribe if this story resonated with you. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember, your worth is innate, not earned, and certainly not dependent on anyone else's ability to recognize it.